So in this video we're going to be looking at demystifying weights, starting with demystifying the unladen weight as part of the series I'm doing about the build of my new Ford Ranger. So why would you care about weights? Why is it important? If you're new to four-wheel driving, you probably never cared about how much your vehicle weighs or how much it can carry. Why do you care? Well, the short answer is something called payload. When you go camping or four-wheel driving or touring or towing, then there's a limit to the amount of load, stuff, matter, things you can put into a vehicle, and you tend to run into that limit very, very quickly, and you don't want to exceed it for a whole range of reasons, such as staying legal, being insured, warranty work, and just good handling and performance from your vehicle. Anyway, let's run through it. So there's something called the maximum the vehicle can weigh, and in Australia we call that the GVM, or gross vehicle mass. That's the maximum it can weigh. It's different acronyms in different places in the world. Then we've got what the vehicle weighs unladen, which is variously called the kerb weight, the tare weight, the unladen mass, and various others. And the difference between the two, that minus that, is your payload, and that's how much you can carry. So that's you, your family, your food, your water, your accessories like your roof rack, your tyres, your canopy, your drawers, fridge, absolutely everything comes out of that payload. And modern vehicles don't have a lot of payload. We tend to take heavy stuff these days, and that's why it's a problem. So before we go any further, I want to talk about mass and weight very briefly, and if you already know what I'm going to say, please just skip this bit of it and also skip the comment section as well. So mass, this is how much matter there is in an object, and weight is how much force is exerted, measured in newtons, but usually expressed in kilograms. So what does this mean? So a vehicle might have a mass of 2,000 kilograms, and it would have a mass of 2,000 kilograms on the moon, but because gravity is so much less on the moon, its weight on the moon might only be 330 kilograms. So imagine this Ranger only weighing maybe 300 kilograms on the moon. That would be pretty amazing. So for the purposes of what we talk about in vehicle weights, mass and weight mean the same thing. They do not mean the same thing if you're a physicist, particularly if you're an astrophysicist dealing in interstellar transportation and the moon, but for what we're doing, it will do. Okay, now there's huge variations in unladen mass of any two given vehicles. So diesels are generally heavier than petrols, automatics are generally heavier than manuals, higher spec like your Grandes, your Cakadoos are heavier than the poverty packs, that's the GXLs and XLs of the world, and things like wide low profile tyres weigh more than narrow high profile tyres. So here's an example. Here's a Ranger 2.2 litre, that's the previous generation, 2,064 kilograms. Then there's another Ranger, also white, the same size, but it's got the bigger engine, and it's also four-wheel drive, and there's 214 kilograms worth of difference between the two. Another example, here's a base 200 series, 2640 kilograms. Here's the top end, 2740. There's 100 kilograms difference between the two. So your first lesson is that you've got to be very specific about exactly the year and the trim level and the engine and the transmission and everything else when you're looking at the weight of a vehicle. So that's really important. Be super specific. Don't go, oh, a Ford Ranger weighs, 2,000 kilograms. Well, it might, but it also might weigh closer to 2,300. Now, there is no standard definition of unladen mass. I'm going to go through some examples now. Don't try and read them. The concept is what I want to get across. So the EC directive has one definition there, 90% full of fuel for kerb weight. General Motors says it's a full tanker of fuel. Mitsubishi's got a different definition. Land Rover, the ADRs, the Australian Design Rules, different again. ADRs talk about kerb mass, and they really call that unladen mass. Tare mass again is different in the ADRs. Toyota's got a different definition. Ford's got a different definition. And often these come out as a range or approximation. So how much does the vehicle actually weigh? It's kind of hard to know. So the takeaway here is there's no one definition of what unladen mass is. Is it unladen? Is it kerb? Is it myro? Is it something else? And even that, okay, it's kerb, but what is your definition of kerb versus your definition for kerb? Who's to know, right? Don't shoot the messenger. I know it's a mess. So are there any guidelines? Here's approximately how it works. So the kerb weight is generally the unladen weight, and Tare weight is the unladen weight plus full tank of fuel, kind of, sorta. So kerb is usually 100% fuel, Tare is usually 10 litres of fuel, and 100% litres of fuel will obviously start to penalise vehicles like the some Toyotas, which have 120, 180 litres worth of diesel. Compare their full of fuel weight to something like a Ford Ranger, which has only got 80 litres, and then, you know, there's a difference. So here's the rough definition. So your kerb unladen weight is generally 90 to 100% full of fuel, whereas your Tare weight typically only has 10 litres, but even that's not completely consistent. Don't try and memorise this stuff. Just for your particular vehicle, when you're comparing one or two, get as specific as you can about what that unladen mass is. So Ford in particular, so I use them as an example. So here's my car, and here's Ford's excellent specification spreadsheet or PDF, and I have picked out, that's my car, and there are no less than 3 unladen weights for it, which sounds complicated, but actually it's a good thing, and Ford have done the best job of specifications that I've seen for a while, so well done Ford. So here are the 3. So let's dive into them in a bit more detail there. The kerb weight, the minimum kerb weight, and the Tare weight. So 3 different unladen weights, and I have put them in this graph here so you can see how different they are, and there's a zoom in of it. Okay, so what do they actually mean? In the fine print, point 7 in Ford's document, here's what they mean. Now the first one, this is my bold and italics. The kerb weight is the vehicle with a full tank of fuel. That's great, so we know that with that. Without occupants, luggage, but also, this is really good, with the heaviest possible combination of factory fitted optional equipment. So I like that. It goes, yeah. So if you had an XLT, for example, as I do, and you ticked every single box, that's how much it would weigh. Great. Minimum kerb weight, same again, full tank of fuel, without occupants, but the lightest possible. So this is the base XLT with the absolute minimum, and that's really good as well. And Tare weight is the vehicle with 10 litres of fuel and with the heaviest possible combination. So again, that starts to give you an idea of what is where. So I think you're really working off those 2. Now there's other information there as well, such as saying how it calculates the payload, which is essentially what I've already described. Definitions of payload. Ranger Raptor, they treat it differently for some reason, and a bit more about payloads there, and just a caution that you've got to go and get it weighed. So this is the one which I would be using if you are looking at comparing a Ford with something else, because it is the heaviest, and if it's if your car arrives and it's 30-40 kilos heavier, happy about that. You don't want it to be 30-40 kilos heavier than what you're planning on. So my car's weight, I took my car as soon as I got it to a GoWeigh weighbridge, which you can do 24/7. There's many different locations around Australia, and I weighed it. As you can see, I got all of the weights here, and the result is 2280 kilograms. I also took my car over to a mobile weighing operator who I work with, and he did exactly the same weighing, but a corner weight. So in other words, how much weight was on that wheel, and then axle weight, that wheel, and then also the axle weight as well. And that also came out to 2280. So the 2 scales agreed, as I kind of hoped that they would. So let's look at 3 ways to weigh your vehicle. Way 1 is the GoWeigh weighbridge. Now this is a network of 24 weighbridges around Australia, 24/7 operations located at BP servos, and it'll cost you $45 to do a car weigh and $58 for a caravan weigh. Now you'll get your weights to the nearest 20 kilograms, and you'll get front axle and rear axle and a combined weight. You won't get weights per wheel, and you will get a process. So if you're weighing a caravan, you'll be told how to weigh the vehicle, put it forwards to this set of scales, then back, etc., and it will put it all together for you. Advantage there is it's self-service, 24/7, no booking, turn up, and relatively low cost. Now you can do the same thing at a public weighbridge, which might have 0 cost at all. But then you're going to need to figure out how to do that process, which GoWay provides for you. And the times for public weighbridges, they may not always be open, and there might be other people queuing to get onto it, etc. You often find them at your local tip. You will still get the axle weights, provided you can put your vehicle over 2 scales if they've got 2 scales there. You won't get per wheel weights, and you're going to have to figure out your own process. So this works really well if you know where one is. It's open at times that suit you, and then you can figure out your own weights. The third way is to call one of the many mobile operators around the country, and I've got a list of them on my website. The advantage here is that it's all done for you. You do need to make an appointment, however. I don't think they're going to be overly impressed if you turn up at 2 o'clock in the morning and ask for a weigh. The cost will vary depending on how much time you need. If it's just your vehicle, that's going to be quicker than if you're going to get your vehicle weighed with a caravan or trailer on the back and then mess around with weight distribution hitches, etc. You will get weights probably to the nearest 2 kilogram, and they will be per weight or per wheel. So if you've got a tandem caravan, you'll know whether your front axle is heavier than your back axle, more weight on it, I should say. And they will step you through a process and explain everything. So this is the only one where you're going to get an explanation of all those weights and advice to help fix it up. So which is best? I would use them all. If you're not sure about weights and so forth, I would definitely book in with a mobile operator, or at the very least go use my towing weights calculator, watch my videos on weights. If you are pretty confident about what you're doing, maybe you've seen a tow operator, then use GoWay. And if you happen to know where a public weighbridge is and that's all you need, just drive on, get weights, drive off. Well, if you've got one of those handy, well, why not use one of those? So 3 options, choose which is best for you at your particular circumstances. So my car's weight versus the Ford specs, let's take a look at that. So my car came out at 2280, it was the XLT plus some touring packs, the 360 cameras, etc. Ford's weights ranged from 2233 to 2349, and by the way, when I weighed it, it was full of fuel. The midpoint of those weights is 2291, and I've put them up here. So here is the Tare weight and here's the kerb weight. So you can see my car came in under the kerb weight, which, you remember, is all of the options ticked. My car doesn't have all of the options ticked. It's above the minimum kerb weight, probably because it's got the touring pack and the cameras and so forth, and it's just a fraction under the definition of the Tare weight. So good work, Ford. Ford have given you 3 weights to work with, which is fantastic, and they actually appear to be accurate. So I'm kind of actually a little bit shocked. Ford is the example. If I look at Toyota, they give you a range. Ineos just give you 1 weight for pretty much all of that type of vehicle, which is nonsensical. So I think Ford are kind of leading the industry in what they're doing with detailed information for buyers here. Now, what happens if you put someone in the front or the rear seat? How does that affect weights? Well, here's me. At the time of this exercise, I weighed 88 kilograms, and by the way, this has to be with whatever you're normally wearing, so clothed, not nude. There's the car, and there's a version of me sitting in the front, and this is what it turned out to be. Remember, 88 kilograms, so 51 kilograms went on the front axle, and 37 kilograms went on the rear. Probably more of interest to people is the percentage. So whatever you put here, 58% of that weight goes on the front axle and 40% on the rear. If we switch over, when I jumped in the back, then 31% of that 88 kilograms went on the front axle and nearly 70% on the rear axle. And I'll go into more about weight distribution, but that gives you an idea. So that would be true of pretty much most dual cab utes. Wagons would be slightly different because that rear axle would move a bit further in, but that's easy enough to calculate. So summary then. First thing, unladen weight is important because it's part of your payload calculation, and your payload calculation is important because that is how much stuff you can take, including modifications to your car like tyres, winches, bull bars, and even when you replace things, if you upgrade the suspension, the upgraded components will be heavier, and I will be going through all of this in great detail. Payload is how much you can carry. Be very careful about definitions. If you see a kerb definition or, from, let's say, Ineos or Toyota or Ford or Nissan or Mitsubishi, it's not necessarily going to be exactly the same definition. I know it's a pain, right? Also note what's included. So in the case of my Ranger, it comes standard with a tow bar, so its unladen weight includes a tow bar. If you are buying, I don't know, let's say a Navara, I don't know if that comes with a tow bar or not, but say it doesn't, you then need to add the weight of the tow bar to make it equivalent to the Ranger. Yes, this is complicated. And I think owners of Fords can use the kerb as their calculating weight quite comfortably, because that's the maximum it's going to be, and I've proven that to be accurate. And if it's less than that, well, you've got an extra 30, 40, 50 kilograms to play with, and no one's going to say no to that. So get your vehicle weighed as soon as you get it unladen, and use Go Weigh and or a mobile operator to do it. So I hope you found this video useful. If you've got any questions, please use the comments, and thank you for watching.